Welcome to the Creepin' It Real Show, your one-stop shop for weird news, movie reviews, otherworldly, and paranormal shenanigans. We'll take a dive into what's going on in creepy pop culture. You can follow Creepin' It Real Show on Twitter at creepin_it. You can email us at creepinitrealshow@gmail.com. You can also go to our website, creepinitshow.com. Welcome to Creepin' It Real. I'm one of your hosts, Yardley, and today we are going to talk about Cloverfield Paradox. But before we begin, I want to introduce my co-host from the great state of sunny California, Moni. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. Good morning. I'm going to head off to a little day trip to the snow with my kids. Hopefully it will be the first time that I've ever seen fresh powder on the ground. And, recently I actually just saw this week that California was voted the worst quality of life of all the states.
Oh.
And I was like, yeah, let me go think about that while I lay on one of our beautiful beaches. And then in 2 more hours, I'll go think about it some more when I'm up in the snow. So needless to say, I love living here. There's some issues, but where is perfect? So anyway, looking forward to a day with the family in the snow after our recording.
Hey, you know what? That's true. And it's always great to have options. So I hope you have fun, and I hope the change in temperature doesn't affect you too much.
Nah.
All right. From the other side of the crib, we've got Christy. How's it going?
Hey, Yardley. It's going good. I'm sitting here in my office amongst tons of debris and construction while we tear our house apart to put in Ethernet in our walls. So it's pretty crazy. I mean, literally sawdust and shit everywhere as I sit here with my coffee and taking my new microphone out for a spin. So I can't complain. It's pretty good. You know, you live here in Atlanta, and it's chilly but beautiful out today. So I'll take it.
Yeah, you know what? I have to agree, and it's always nice to have first world problems.
Exactly.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
On these sides. But as mentioned earlier, we're going to talk about the Cloverfield Paradox. And I'm just curious, were both of you up on this whole Cloverfield thing from the beginning? Have you seen all 3 series? And overall, is this something that's been easy or hard for you to track?
For me, Cloverfield is one of my top favorite movies. I loved it. I've always loved it. I can't even exactly put my finger on why I like it so much. I think it's because I was really disappointed with the Blair Witch Project, the way they hyped it so much. And then that was a found footage kind of like Cloverfield. I think Cloverfield did it the right way. And there were times when you're watching it, and of course the camera's really shaky and you're like, whoa. But I love the monsters. I loved that they're, these kids partying at a party. I could relate. And then all of a sudden, all hell breaks loose, and just, their decisions to go and, rescue people. I just thought it was a great, solid movie. The second one, I think my struggle with Cloverfield, the across the board, is, and which a lot of people like, is that they don't match. None of them really are part of, which there are, of course, ways to say that this last one does, because they're explaining it. And I loved the link that you provided, Yardley, which I'm sure we'll discuss later. But I really liked the first one. I'm waiting to like another one as much as I liked the first one, I guess is what I'm trying to say. So that doesn't mean I don't like the other ones. It just, I'm still, like I said when we briefly discussed this a couple of episodes ago, is I want the fucking monsters. Give me the monsters. Like, where are the monsters? Give them to me. So that's my stance. I'm sticking to it.
All right. How was it for you, Moni?
Yeah, the same. I really loved Cloverfield as a film, the first one, and it's one of my favorite found footage movies, besides maybe like Wreck or something like that. But
yeah,
I would like to see more of the monsters for sure. I love monster films, and very few are done very well. I think there's a lot that they show and don't show, and to a really good effect. It's a really good film. I like the time frame that it's set in. I like the characters. And I think they did a really great job with it. And, now having more time and distance away, because I actually watched Paradox on Super Bowl Sunday. And now that I've had more time to kind of let that all settle because I have watched Cloverfield Lane as well, I really want them now to do like a fourth film that brings all the monsters, brings it all together, and makes it all make sense. I think that's really looking at the poor ratings and looking at my feelings, which we'll get into, about how I feel like they're just kind of slapping the Cloverfield name on completely different films with very little that's connecting them. I would love a redeeming movie where they just bring it all together by having all the fucking monsters and somehow make it all make sense. I kind of doubt that that's in the works, but we might see.
Yeah, I definitely agree with both of you. I think that's been one of the main problems, especially when I've been online kind of looking at a lot of the fan reviews and some of the discussion going around this series in general is the lack of cohesiveness. And I think that this is definitely something that I don't always like using the terms make it up as you go, but I don't think that they thought the full, I don't think that they had everything together that they wanted to do before they started. And it gets a little bit confusing. Now, there's been a lot of fan-made videos and, theory crafting and Easter egg videos. And this series as a whole, it has a lot of stuff going for it. I remember the very first Cloverfield, they had the viral marketing campaign, and it had you going all over the internet looking up these different, these different websites, like, the Slusho thing that's kind of a Easter egg and all of these, that drink. Yeah. So I thought that they had a good campaign going with the first one. But after this one came out, I did watch it after the Super Bowl. Now, I personally enjoyed it, but if you look at IMDb, they gave it a 5.6 out of 10. Rotten Tomatoes gave it a 17%, but that's an aggregation site. So apparently most of the reviewers weren't really feeling it. Now, I definitely don't feel like it's a 17%. I thought it was okay, but I'm not a huge fan of the series. I love the first one, and I liked Cloverfield Paradox. I did not see Cloverfield Lane. Okay. So maybe,
You're not missing much.
Okay. I mean, there were some actors that were in it that I thought
fantastic
were pretty good, but I just, nobody really told me. Everybody who I heard talk about it were saying that it really, and this is the part of the problem, they really didn't have much that they felt to do with the first one.
Well, this was, my complaint and my gripe, which I feel like I'm repeating it, but I really feel like this is how it is this whole 10 Cloverfield Lane and Paradox in some situations is the whole humans are the real monsters type theme. And that's really what 10 Cloverfield Lane was about. You don't see anything. They're literally in a bunker most of the time. I'd say 98% of the time. And, any movie that's got Dan from Roseanne in it, I have to watch. Like that, you're selling me because I love him. I love John Goodman. He's in so many other things too, but of course that's where I first grew to love Dan as the dad of an all-American family, kind of, per se, an all-American white trash family. So it was frustrating to watch that after watching Cloverfield, and so much time had gone by, and you're thinking, oh man, this is gonna be a good one. Oh, they've really worked on this. They've been thinking this one through. And no, that isn't the case at all. It was, I kind of walked away like, what the fuck was that? Like, what? Yeah. Those weren't even the same monsters. I mean, hello. Yeah. So like what Moni said, they made some movies and they slapped the Cloverfield name on them,
You know what, Christy, I wanted to piggyback off what you said. There is some interest to the humans are the real monsters, and actual monsters are like the catalyst for that. And right. They're kind of doing like The Walking Dead is one type of show that they're kind of using that idea with and lately to less and less success than they've done in the past. But for this, like for once, since there are so few good monster films, like Like Jeepers Creepers was supposed to be a good monster movie, and it was not.
Mer.
So like, I want a good fucking monster movie. I don't.
Yeah.
The humans are the monsters. Yes, that's most of the time, but we see that in real life. I'm sick to death of humans as monsters. Thanks so much. I just want to see some actual monsters go and fuck some shit up. So just give me a good monster movie and some popcorn and leave me alone. Like that's
exactly. Yes, I agree.
I totally agree on that front as well.
But in the other sense of it, I also really feel like Paradox in its own was a solid movie. I enjoyed the concept of where they were taking it. I think especially now with the reality of science, they've come out and said many times for probably the last 5 years is there are other dimensions. They are there. They exist. And so you're seeing a lot of that happening now in movies. It's kind of playing over. There was always some before, but now it's really happening because sometimes movies mirror, real life. And I liked the concept. I just wanted more. I wish they could have incorporated the bones of the original Cloverfield into this and not made it just about the being stuck in another dimension and trying to get back and who do you trust and who's the bad guy and who's the good guy, which I liked how the lines were blurred. I mean, you wanted to not like what's her name? I can't remember her name. The one at the end that comes out, Elizabeth Debicki or whatever, Jensen. That's her name. You wanted to not like her because she's, walking around killing people, but in the same breath, she's trying to save her planet too. So it was a struggle to you get what she's doing. Of course, you're not happy she's killing people, but to get it. So I liked all that. I thought it was a good story. And if I wasn't walking into it thinking this is Cloverfield and looking for Cloverfield things, I would have enjoyed it a lot more. And probably I just need to go back and erase all of that and those expectations and watch it again and then just kind of really look at the concept in itself and not get so frustrated at the weird, they're trying to pull in the guy that's down on Earth, that's her husband.
Yeah.
That whole scenario was kind of felt like it was thrown in there to make it look like it was Cloverfield,
Yeah.
And not get so upset about all that. And then, and I also, because I love Chris O'Dowd, the comedian, and now, of course, he's acting too. He's the guy that loses his arm, and he was hysterical. I laughed out loud several times with him talking about his arm, and his arm was trying to write something, and he's like,
"That's so
my
cool.
arm
My
wants to write something." Yeah, he was just so matter of fact about it. Yeah, my arm wants to write something. He doesn't even know what to think about all that, and I thought that was all pretty funny. So through with the Paradox, I enjoyed the concept. And so it's frustrating when we have to sit down and review it because, of course, the other movies are going to come up and we're going to compare them. And you just can't. There's no way because they're so all completely 100% different from each other. Yeah.
Well, I didn't really want to interrupt the rants.
Hey, let me go. I'm on my second cup of coffee.
Well, let's let our listeners know. I'm just going to give them a quick overview of what it's about. And then what we're going to do is then we're going to jump back in and we're going to talk about, where we would class it. What do we think about, the different revelations and who are our favorite characters, and probably just quickly after that, kind of dive into some of our favorite scenes. But for the most part, what the movie is about is the Cloverfield Paradox suggests that all of the Cloverfield films take place across several alternate timelines. And the crew that's in the Cloverfield Paradox, they're responsible for bringing the monsters that we've seen in the other movie and also the aliens into all the separate timelines, therefore all the separate films. Now, I don't think that we really think that the execution of that might not have been the best, but that's what they were going for. They do this in their spaceship, and they have a particle accelerator. Now, the version that they have is a small version of the very real Large Hadron Collider. And the Hadron Collider, which could be a whole nother show, it's pretty much the world's largest and most powerful particle collider. They also say that it's the most complex experimental facility that's ever been built, and it's also the largest single machine in the world. Essentially, because the world or this earth is living in a energy crisis. So basically what they're trying to do is they're trying to fire off this particle accelerator to try to find an infinite source of energy. And I guess the safest way to do that was to do it out in space. But what we find out throughout the movie is that every time they test the machine, apparently it messes with space and time. And that's where a lot of the shit show and these monsters come from. So I thought that the concept was cool, but I don't think that the execution of what they were trying to do through all three films, I didn't think that it was really cohesive, and I don't think that it makes sense. It's definitely one of these movies where it could probably be its own thing, you know? I mean, or at least for me. So one of the things that I wanted to start off, as far as the movie in itself is concerned, where would we class it? I think that it's more of a sci-fi thriller. I mean, sort of like I think when we were doing Annihilation in the previous show, I think it's like a psychological sci-fi thriller. Wasn't really anything scary about it. I don't think that it really had any good jump scares in it. How would either of you, class this movie?
Same, the sci-fi thriller. And there was so much potential for scare. I feel like when people started, Dowd, I forget the comedian you were just talking about, Christy, when
Yes.
he got his arm stuck, and I was like,
Mundy?
oh, this is now the shit's about to start going down, and then kind of we lost out on that. And then that other chick starts murdering people. And I mean, there was potential for some better horror there, but it was just sort of moments, but nothing really like scary. But yeah, definitely sci-fi and thriller kind of as the mystery unraveled. And then it turned out I didn't care that much about the mystery once it unraveled.
You're like, oh, this isn't my reality. Who fucking cares?
Yeah.
I'd say the same, and I would ask you, Yardley, do you think when they made the original Cloverfield, this is where they would want the concept to go? Is that really when they made it? I think what's happening here is we're getting answers to questions that nobody really had or nobody wanted to know. There's kind of that exactly. Concept of mystery of where it came from, but that wasn't really, when I walked out of Cloverfield, I wasn't going, where did it come from? I was like, that's some fucked up shit. It wasn't based on that. And so now we've made it about where how it happened or where the creatures came from, and I just don't think anybody cares.
Yeah, and they're doing it it's just in a very confusing way. I mean, if I had saw the first Cloverfield movie, I would have thought that if there would have been another one, it probably would have dealt with the fallout of what was happening at the end of the first one. And then we would have gotten a little bit more information potentially on that creature. But I thought the creature was awesome. I wanted more of that. I totally agree with you. I want to see more monsters. And I think, Moni probably agrees the same. You want to see this cool creature be realized in a better fashion than they've been doing it, because when you've got a monster like this, especially after we saw it in the first one, I don't think that there's any reason to really hide it. Like I want to see, I want to see how everybody's dealing with it. It's not like when we were watching Annihilation, how sometimes if you keep the monster away, it's a little bit better. That's something that I remember Moni saying that she has an issue with sometimes, is that I think you were talking about It, and you felt like they showed Pennywise a little bit too much, and some of that's true. But when you got a cool monster like this, I think
show
you
it
need to show it more.
sometimes. Yeah, sure.
Absolutely.
And you know what, though? There's another angle on this, though. So here's the only other scenario that they were probably faced with, though, was that you do a sequel and you show where it came from or whatever, and you end up with like, well, any other cue, like Independence Day or any other monster film or alien film where they're fighting them on Earth, right?
Right.
So on the other hand, though, for me, and I kind of feel like for you guys too, a well done one of those movies is always welcome, even if it is covering some of the same ground. You have another Godzilla or something done really well, though, like can still be badass. But maybe they were just thinking they didn't want to do the same old shit that always gets done, and that's why they went this direction. I don't know.
Well, I think with Cloverfield, you have one guy directing it, which is Matt Reeves. who's actually really good friends with J.J. Abrams. I think, and I know he didn't write it, so I think, that also plays a key part in it. But, you had different director and different writers for Cloverfield. And then after that, J.J. Abrams takes the project over. And the other two of the Cloverfields, 10 and Paradox, are so J.J. Abrams. Like, I like J.J. Abrams, and I like the stuff that he gets his hands on, and the way, like, of course I loved Lost. And, but that's not what I want from Cloverfield. Like, he's thinking too deep into the meaning of it, and not just giving us the surface of the horror and the way the first one came out. So you have different people directing it and writing it, and you can tell. So it just looks really hodgepodge to me.
Yeah.
Well, you know what? I mean, for me, with the Cloverfield Paradox, I'm not gonna say that things like, time and space getting bent and alternate timelines. Usually, sometimes those things can get confusing, but I would be with it if some of the things that they did in this movie, you could go back and watch the previous two and say, oh, okay, that's what that meant. Because you remember in the first Cloverfield, at the beginning of the movie, they were, the guy and his girlfriend, they were recording each other, and then they were riding by that mass of water. And if you squint your eyes, you could see something coming out of the sky and splashing in the water. And I was thinking, one of the first things I thought at the end of Paradox, when Hamilton was coming down in the pod, I was thinking that the pod in the first movie that they never explained was her pod hitting, in the ocean.
Right.
I thought that might have, I was like, oh man, maybe that's what happened. But then you get in this abyss called YouTube, and you're looking at all these people, breaking down these videos and, pointing out timeline things.
Yeah.
And after I looked at some of that, people were saying that it wouldn't work because the monsters were already there, and then she splashes. And I was just like, you know what, this is getting way more confusing than it's worth. And I think that's one of the reasons why it turns off other people. But are there any Easter eggs or any things that you might have noticed that might have synced up in any of these movies? I mean, this is just for either of you.
Well, I read an article which, you get those people, like you're saying, like you saw on YouTube, with a lot of time on their hands. And they're saying that when you play the first Cloverfield and Cloverfield Paradox at the same time, even though they're happening in different dimensions, they match up. So, and the end of Paradox, you see the monster jump up into the sky as they're coming down, in their thing. That is apparently matches up to the end of Cloverfield, where the monster jumps up and gets shot at and stuff. So they're saying, which J.J. Abrams says that really wasn't his intention, but he enjoys that people are actually thinking that much into it. But so of course, there's a lot of different theories or things that you look at in the third one that you want to think is coming from the first one. I would say, because I was so desperately looking for a Cloverfield connection, that at the end, when you do see the monster jump up in the sky, then it kind of made me mad it was over. Because that's what I was like, that's what I'm looking for right there. Yeah.
Yes.
And credits.
Finally.
And I'm like, no. So
Yeah.
Well, Moni, I want to ask you this because, with the first Cloverfield movie, and I was mentioning that viral marketing campaign, one of the things, if you clicked on all of these websites and you looked at the things that they had pieced together revolving around Slusho, I was led to believe that, just based off of me looking at all these sites, was that there's a chemical or a plant that they use to make Slusho. And I think some chemical got mixed up, with that plant. And then
from, I guess, what the monster, people were thinking that whatever that is, potentially that thing that splashed down in the water, they were saying that those chemicals in that plant caused it to mutate and
Oh,
to become
gosh.
to become that Cloverfield monster. That was something that I was believing before I saw this, and the splashdown that Hamilton was having at the end, and I kind of link that to the splashdown that was never explained in the first one. Did you hear anything about that? That the monster was created from eating like the mutated version of that slusho plant?
No, that's
Okay.
interesting. And this is actually you telling me this is the first time I've ever heard it. And honestly, I would like to know what paradox people live in that
Yeah.
they have time to like conceive of these things. I mean, good on them because that's certainly interesting to hear and that's, I guess, feasible. But honestly, the way that these films are running, and when you read like J.J. Abrams talking about it, and when you look at, I'm sure we're going to talk about this in a few minutes, but when you look at what the next film is supposed to be about, like it really looks like they're going on a no plan and a no rules. And I honestly don't know that at this point that, that might have been, here's something that's going to blow everyone's mind. Maybe the original Cloverfield was just supposed to be a very well done, good little standalone film. And there never was supposed to be a whole universe.
That's what
and
I
people
believe.
like going
That's
on
the
endless
truth.
tirades. And,
Truth. But here's what I'm hoping about the next film, because after reading what it's about, of course, it takes place during World War II, but it looks like it's going to have some monsters in it. So at least we got that going for it. And we're all going to watch it anyway, but so we can bitch about it later. So we're going to hate watch it.
That's what we do. That's what the internets make us do, man.
Spur.
Well, hey, I personally, the concept of alternate timelines and all of that type of stuff, if it's done in a simplistic way that people can track, I can get behind it. That was one of the things that worried me about Game of Thrones with that whole Hodor thing. I was like, oh shit, now they're bringing all this in and I'm going to start hating it. But they backed away from that pretty quickly. But for me, I like the concept of doing the alternate timeline thing, but like both of you have said, you have to plant the seeds to set these types of things up. And I don't think that they did it. But one thing concerning alternate timelines was, I believe it was with the character that Christy was mentioning earlier. I think her name was Jensen, was that character?
Yeah.
Well, she was the one that had, that was morphed into like the circuitry of the space station, right?
Yes.
That was kind of, to me, I thought that was cool. And one of the explanations or the observations that people had made just, doing a little research into this was the reason why she was stuck was that in the alternate timeline, apparently she was on this ship or something like that in another timeline. And that's what caused her to be intertwined with the circuitry. Was that something that either of you thought about when it happened, or you just saw it and was like, oh shit, that's kind of fucked up, but you just kept it moving?
The second thing.
Yeah, I kind of figured at first, of course, when she's stuck, I immediately had no idea, you don't know what's going on. But when she says, I'm on the ship and you stayed down there because you have your kids, then I knew, okay, she was supposed to be on the ship. So this is another dimension and another alternate reality where what's her name? Sorry, the main character who I loved. When I know we haven't gotten to that yet.
It's Hamilton.
Hamilton, that's her name. Yeah. When she says, "You're down on Earth, and I was the one up here doing your job," and also when she said, "Don't trust." Is it Schmidt that she said not to trust? Don't trust Schmidt. That again, because it was bizarre that this lady just appeared in their inner workings of their ship and then was having issues with people on the crew, and she knew them. So something has happened. They've probably thrown themselves into another reality. That's kind of where I was at this point. Like thinking, all right.
That's true.
Well, Christy and Mona, it'll be great if you could follow up as far as the characters and relatability to characters that we have in this movie. I have kind of a top three, and I'm gonna have to admit my third one is just based off of I've been a fan of hers, for a little while. But we're gonna talk about I think her name is Juju Mbatha Raw. She plays the character Hamilton, who's our main character. My second favorite is David Oyelowo. Aloha. He plays the character Keel in this, but he's been in movies like Selma. He played MLK in that movie. He's Agent Callus in Star Wars Rebels. He's in that new movie that's coming out called Gringo, and also A Wrinkle in Time, and also Juju. She was in Concussion, Black Mirror, and she's going to be in A Wrinkle, in Time as well. And I didn't even know that A Wrinkle in Time had either of them in it. And my third one is Ziyi Zhang, and she's the young lady who's after the Green Destiny in Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon.
Yeah.
She was in Rush Hour 2, Memoirs of a Geisha. And what made me smile bigly was I saw that she's going to be in the Godzilla versus Kong movie that's going to be coming out in a couple of years. Now, granted, I have to be honest with you. I think that Keel and Hamilton, they put a lot of the focus around those two characters, with Keel being more of the senior leadership, and Hamilton pretty much is going to end up being that person as some of the tragic things that transpire in this movie go along. But I have to say, those were my standouts. I thought that all of those characters did a pretty good job in the role that they were in. But I also kind of felt like the character of Tam that was played by Ziyi, did y'all was it weird to you that she only spoke in Chinese and because they didn't have any subtitles, or at least not in the one that I was watching. Did it work for you that she only spoke in Chinese, but everybody else seemed to know what was up with her?
Yeah, there was a lot of weird things in this movie though, but I guess that's the paradox, right?
Yeah, I guess so.
I felt like in a way, and I thought, first of all, I liked her. I thought her character was great, but I also felt like, and maybe this was just me, they kind of typecasted her a little bit with her behavior. Like, she was this cold kind of, I don't know how to explain it. She just ignorant Americans would think of somebody from China almost. It was like she was just, and I liked the fact that she was speaking Chinese and we didn't know what she was saying, but then we knew what she was saying because of the way people were responding to her, because it's really showing you in the future, we've all got our heads out of our asses and realized there's other cultures and people out there that speak other languages. And hey, we're learning those languages instead of everybody learning American, So it was like, but a part of her behavior almost, there was no explanation for. So then I felt like, are they totally just like stereo, typecasting her as the Chinese person, and I didn't really know, but I liked her and I thought she did a great job. I love the previous work she's been in, so she was definitely at the end one of my favorites. I really liked Elizabeth Debicki. I think she did a great job as Jensen. She's gorgeous, and I loved, and I'm gonna completely butcher her name, Yardley, that Juju, is that her name?
Yeah, I'm thinking it's Juju, and I'm gonna just say the M is silent. I just say Batha Raw. So just say Miss Raw.
Yeah, I mean, talk about an absolutely stunning person. Jeez, yes. I was just sitting there like googly eyed the whole movie watching her. She's gorgeous. And she did such a good job. I mean, and I hate to say this because I understand why they had her husband on Earth, but honestly, she was such a good actress. You didn't need that part of the movie. She was playing this tortured person going through a lot of shit, and it was there on her in her acting. You didn't need her dude down on Earth doing things that had really nothing to do with what was happening with them. And I know they did that to kind of add that extra feeling of, oh, get them home, get her back to her husband. But you didn't need it because she was so good. It was like she had that tortured, she's lost so much. And, and her just complete, she's going to go now down to this earth and have her kids, even though she's already down there. I mean, what a crazy,
Moral dilemma.
Exactly. Yeah. God, I really felt for her, and she was probably my favorite for sure. Jensen coming in on a second. Tam and Mundy, Chris O'Dowd, would be tied for third for me.
So yeah, Juju, her Miss Raw, her acting, I agree, and yeah, she's stunningly beautiful, and I really have nothing to add, Christy, because they didn't need the Major Tom or the Yay and Armageddon movie. Like, what the hell? All that stuff. But and also Elizabeth Debicki. So I kind of like characters where you probably can't trust them, and then you find out that gray area where you can't trust them, but you can see their reasoning for what they're doing. So I thought her character was super interesting in that respect. Like, she starts killing people, but you're like, maybe I would too if I were her. And then I'm just going to throw, because we haven't mentioned him, Daniel Brawl in there, the Schmidt, because, you know, we were told by Elizabeth Debicki's Jensen character that we couldn't trust him, and he's got that face, and he's Zemo in Civil War, you know, Captain America Civil War, and he definitely was a bad dude in that. And I was like, yeah, you can't trust Zemo. He's a bad dude, but then he doesn't turn out to be a bad dude in this paradox. And so that was interesting. But I don't trust his face. So.
You know what? Agreed on that. You're right. Schmidt was definitely a sleeper character there.
Yeah.
Actually, now that you've got me thinking about it again, I would probably put him above the character of Tam. But the person who had the most spectacular death, at least in my opinion, was Tam. Even though that they relied on a lot of these tropes that scientists have always said, you know, if you get launched out in space, you will not freeze instantaneously. You'll just cool off, you know, as normal, and then, you know, and die. I think they say within 15 seconds you'll black out, and you know, those types of things. But the fact that they didn't do the standard, just someone gets blown out of an airlock, they did it with the water, and then the water froze, and I thought that was just one of the most epic sci-fi deaths that I've ever seen, because there was a sense of urgency there, and I think that everybody expected for the door to blast off completely, but I thought that was pretty solid, you know what I mean? At worst, her family might be able to retrieve that body in whatever timeline and get it, you know, it'll be nice and preserved. But was there anything spectacular that kind of stuck out to either of you?
I think the whole arm thing really caught me off guard. Only because, I mean, he lost his arm.
Would you say it disarmed you?
It was disarming, yes, for sure.
Sorry.
But the fact that the arm was like still working was what really freaked me out, and there is really no explanation for it. I mean, even though we have an excuse of different dimensions, that doesn't really give you the reasoning of why it would still be a working arm. You know,
because nothing. Oh, why it would be? I never thought about
like,
that.
Why is
nothing makes sense?
Okay, I get it. You're in another dimension, but then why still doesn't mean that in another dimension, like, your body parts work on their own. They have their own minds. They have but I thought it was clever, and I thought the way they put it together was weird and disturbing, but also, you know, Mundy, his one-liners rotating around the arm were pretty funny. So I thought it was a little crazy, but I thought for some reason it did work in some strange way, even though I had a lot of questions.
Well, in that part where he got stuck, where he actually lost the arm, I was like, oh, why are you going to kill Chris O'Dowd that way? Like, I thought he was a goner there, so that kind of stuck out to me, because that would have been a kind of freaky, cool, like, the ship ate him way to go. Like, that was kind of a cool moment.
Well, let's talk about, you know, execution. You know, let's take out, you know, us not really thinking that, you know, these movies all sync up with one another. But this movie, as its own thing, do you feel like it was executed in a way that anybody could dive into this and follow it, or is this something that if you recommended this movie to someone, would you say, hey, you might need to watch it a couple of times because there are going to be some things that you might not understand or catch? Or was this something that you could follow fluidly from the beginning? For me, I had to watch it a couple times.
I had to rewatch I had to rewatch parts of it closer to the end just one more time because my husband and I did full disclosure, I did my fall asleep thing while we were watching it the first time. And then I asked my husband about it because he had finished it. And he was like, I even want to watch it again because there was a couple things that I didn't quite get. So we rewatched. So I watched it again and then watched like just the ending portion. And then it made sense. But yeah, definitely just to kind of be like, oh. But I think too, some of that was also when you say taking out how it fits in the Cloverfield universe, some of watching it again was sort of trying to think about how it fits. So maybe without that element, I wouldn't have needed to watch it again, maybe. But also as a sci-fi, like a standalone movie, and again, we had this conversation last week when we were talking about Annihilation. There's not a ton of really great sci-fi films being made right now. And so as a standalone sci-fi film, it was enjoyable. It was a nice watch. It's something that if I wasn't being told that it was Cloverfield, and I think it might have gotten better ratings like on Rotten Tomatoes and stuff if people weren't told this was a Cloverfield film. That's just my 2 cents though.
Okay. Well, for me, I don't think this movie can stand alone because of what they did with Back at Earth. Like if you were somebody who sat down and never watched Cloverfield and did not know what Cloverfield was about, you would be really confused about what's happening on Earth. I mean, what are these people running from? What's destroying the city? It never tells you. It doesn't reveal anything about the monsters that were in the original, but it's still going along with the premises that Earth is being destroyed by something. And it doesn't really answer that. I mean, at the end, it shows you the face of the monster, but really? So you would have been going along watching this movie and trying to figure out what's going on Earth. I mean, why? Like I said, if they had taken that all the way off the table, this movie would have been a great non-Cloverfield movie. If you're in space, you've explained it's an energy crisis and they're desperately trying to find a new source of energy. All of that could be its own movie. But when you add the elements back on Earth, it just didn't make sense to me. And so I can't imagine that somebody who sat down and does not know what's happening on Earth could understand that. And what I wish they would have done if they really wanted to incorporate Cloverfield, but of course can't have the giant monster, is taken the little things that were falling off the monster in the original and insert them in the ship. Like the ones where when they scratch you or bite you, you like explode. You know, the ones they found in the subway tunnel. Add something that is a piece of the first Cloverfield.
Yeah. Now, I mean, with that being said, well, let's kind of talk about the future. I mean, I'm going to start off with Moni here. I think it goes without saying they're probably going to do another one. Do either of you agree with that?
Well, they've already done it.
Yeah, that
it's done.
Nazi one or whatever.
Overlords.
Yeah. Overlords.
So when is that? That's out?
It comes out 2019.
Oh, okay. Okay, awesome. I mean, are you worried about that? Or I just kind of want to know, what is it that either of you feel about the future? What do you want to see? I know we talked about we want to see the monster murder, death, kill. I mean, I would love a movie of just that. But is there any other things that you think that this franchise could do a lot better? We've noted the lack of cohesion. It's hard to follow, and it's hard to go back and watch these 3 entries and say, hey, this is how it connects. But is there anything else you feel that this series is lacking that you would hope in the future you would get to see?
I mean,
Chris, go ahead.
I know what I want to see, but I also know what the next movie is gonna be about, and so I know I'm not going to get those answers. In a perfect world, I would like the next movie to be what does New York City look like now? Like after the initial attack, what happened? Are the monsters still there? In present day, like what, you never get to see in 10 Cloverfield Lane, kind of like War of the Worlds. You get to see what's happening to Earth, what's happening to the cities, the destruction and things that are happening with the people. You never see that in 10 Cloverfield Lane because everything happens in a bunker. And then the next movie is in outer space, and now this next movie is going to be in Nazi Germany in World War II. So you don't get that answer of a sequel usually gives you is, okay, the monsters hit New York and everybody was dying. Now, what does it look like now? And that's kind of what I would like to see. I don't really care where they came from or, how they came to be. That really does not, in my any way, pique my interest. But apparently that's where they're going to take it. So we just going to have to go with it.
So piggybacking off of what I want to see is, a true sequel to the original Cloverfield film. And it doesn't even have to be in New York for me, but it has to be set in the same timeline, in the same universe. Mm-hmm. Excuse me, and kind of see what happens. But based on what we're actually going to get, which is this overlord Nazi film, what I want to see for that then, like, hold my beer. What I want to see is monsters eating some nasty ass Nazis.
Yes.
That's what I want to see. I want to see all kinds of different monsters, including the original Cloverfield monster and any monster we've ever seen or had alluded to us before now. Just like, I want to see some nasty Nazis about to do bad things to undeserving people, and then all of a sudden some monsters come and eat their faces. Really, really gory. That's what I want to see. I don't think that's what we're going to get, but that's what I want. So that's my order.
I need to apologize for the listeners because you definitely have to pardon my ignorance. When was the news announced about this Nazi version? Because I just never, because usually when something else is coming up, people will notate that, in different articles. And I was totally clueless to the next installment being in World War II. Was this something that's been announced for a while?
Yeah, it's the NME article that is posted on our show notes, the bottom of it, where it says, what does J.J. Abrams have to say about it? Yeah, he has his little thing about the next film in the franchise called Overlord. And then also, when I did that quick rundown, and this had been, at the time, they hadn't announced it as part of Cloverfield, but when I did that quick rundown of 2019 horror films that are upcoming, that people are excited about, it didn't have much detail, but it just said that Joss Whedon was doing, Joss Whedon's involved, I believe, as of then, untitled World War II horror film.
Okay. They didn't say it was Cloverfield, but they said it was a World War II horror. Yeah, so after together. Well, that's what Moni, the detective that she is, put them together, and we were like, oh, that's one we were just talking about.
Yes,
from before. Okay. And that apparently it's already been filmed. Like, they are just...
I wish they would just drop it then, because waiting until 2019, that's a long-ass time from now.
But here's the deal, and it's a possibility that they will, because you know how they are. They're all secretive. I mean, we didn't even know this one, when it was going to be dropped, where it was going to be dropped. So there's a possibility that it could drop tomorrow. Shit, it could drop tonight. You never know. I mean, they like to catch you off guard, and you never know.
I just typed it into IMDb, and it now says 2018. So
yeah.
Okay. Well, the reason why I didn't read that, when it was talking about J.J. Abrams was talking about whatever, is I had read a previous article, and it was J.J. Abrams kind of speaking up on the whole, alternate dimensions thing. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of on me.
I thought it was more the same. Yeah.
Yeah, I thought it was that. So I was like, okay, I didn't really pay attention. Well, you know what? I've got my fingers crossed, hoping that it'll be something that's more awesome. This is definitely a franchise that I think that if it was put together a little bit better, would be something that I could potentially be close to a super fan of, because I really did like the design of the Cloverfield monster. I really did like the parasites that Christy was mentioning that caused that young lady to explode. I really do like those. I like that stuff, and I definitely would like a more cohesive, explanation of this, of these things. It just appears that they've done so many things on the fly that even they aren't necessarily paying full attention to what the previous film did.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's kind of confusing on that front. But overall, at least for me, I thought it was enjoyable. And maybe my lack of being a super fan is part of the reason why I'm a little bit more forgiving, because I thought that this one in particular and the first one, I thought that at worst, I thought that they were entertaining and I didn't really take them too seriously. It's just that I feel like they got a little cute and a little bit too they were trying to be a little bit too, I don't know, scientific-y or smart or whatever. You know, they could have done things in a more simplistic way that I think would have resonated with audiences better. But I pretty much agree with both of you. I just want to see more monster and just more cool stuff. I don't need much. You know
Yeah.
what I mean?
Well,
Just
here's
monsters.
here's what I kind of gives me a little bit of hope about the next one. Is one of the writers is Billy Ray, and he does a lot of adaptations from stories already written, and that's basically what he's done here. Is he's taken a story that was already written and he's adapting it and writing it as a movie. And he did the Hunger Games, he did Captain Phillips, and he did, which I just watched for the first time last week, was State of Play, which I thought was really good. It was not a horror movie, it was a kind of a drama with Russell Crowe and Helen Mirren, and it had a ton of Ben Affleck. It was Rachel McAdams. There was a ton of people in it, and I really liked that movie. So I kind of have a little bit of hope that maybe he's going to take whatever somebody wrote and turn it into a palatable movie for us, because he's done a pretty good job with his past work. The director isn't J.J. Abrams, it's Julius Avery, and I don't know anything. Maybe you guys, I don't recognize anything that he's done. In fact, most of his movies are short movies.
Yeah.
So that's kind of a uh-oh when you've got...
Well, what if this is a marketing thing where they're just sort of keeping it on the DL right now, and then they're going to show who's really like involved more with it, though?
Could be. I don't know. I mean, they've got the actors on here. I don't know if I don't think I've heard of any of them, but that doesn't mean anything. I'm not overly I don't really remember a lot of people's names, so I'm
the one guy's from Game of Thrones.
Which one?
Pileo Aspak.
Oh yeah, he plays what's his Reek, right?
Yeah, Greyjoy. Yeah, Euron.
Yeah,
he's a bad dude.
Yeah,
and then also he was
yeah.
in Ghost in the Shell. So that's one big name right there. But I was noticing too, it comes out, actually, this says it's going to drop. It doesn't say if it's going to be a Netflix movie. I ain't going to the theater for this shit, so don't even try it. 26th of October. So there you go. October 26th, 2018.
Okay. Well,
October, you said?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay. Well, that's what's up. I mean, we've pretty much gone over a lot of the things that, I had in the show notes. Is there anything that either of you feel like we didn't discuss that we want to take the time to kind of expand upon?
I want to hear your number rating, Yardley.
Yeah.
Yeah. What, out of 5?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'll give it a 3.5. I mean, above average. I've totally seen worse. You know what I mean? Like my bar for horrible is like, I'm pretty forgiving. Like, do either of you remember that movie that was so awful they've never played it on TV after the first time? You remember Garbage Pail Kids? There was a Garbage Pail Kids movie. It was horrible. I mean, it was horrendous. And Christy can probably admit, because we used to collect those cards.
Yes,
remember?
I did. Yes.
Yeah. And I have to admit, I actually had downloaded it. And I attempted to watch it just because, oh man, this was like 30-something years ago or whatever.
Yeah.
And it was so awful. Like I couldn't finish it. So that's my bar for like low. It's like Garbage Pail Kids low. That's the worst movie of all time for me.
Wow.
Hey, it's no Battlefield Earth, the Scientology movie with Travolta and Forrest Whitaker, though. So.
Yeah. So, but I give it a 3.5. I mean, I enjoyed it, and I try not to necessarily bash this franchise too much, because I can't say that a lot of the grievances that other people have that I have, because I don't look at every single thing. And even when you find things wrong with it, it's just so all over the place that even the people who are super fans, some of the stuff they talk about is bullshit too. So, so for me, hey, look, I love the effects. You know, there were 3 or 4 characters that I really enjoyed following in this franchise or in this particular movie. So for me, you know, outside of your Netflix thing, I didn't really spend any scratch on it. So, you know, it is what it
It's
is.
true.
I'll if someone had it on, I wouldn't roll my eyes. You know, I would be more curious to see what they thought.
Yeah, Moni, what do you think?
I give it somewhere like 2.75 to 3. And I need everyone to just stop throwing a bunch of different ingredients, whipping them together, and calling it Cloverfield. That's what I need. Still say Elizabeth Debicki for Captain Marvel instead of what's her face, Brie Larson. And yeah, it was worth watching. And like Yardley said, you know, for the price of my already paid for Netflix subscription. So I'm glad I watched this film, but stop calling it Cloverfield necessarily. And I'm definitely not interested in your rabbit holes and your Easter eggs so much until you make another film with some damn monsters that maybe makes some of this shit make some sense.
Yeah. I gotta say, I'm probably like in the middle of both of you because Yardley, when you were talking about like you're pretty forgiving when you know think about what's like the worst movie you've ever seen, and I think as somebody, and probably all, because I think we're all 3 pretty big Cloverfield fans for the original. I think what they did and the reason why they went this way is because sometimes when you try to create a sequel around an original movie, it can be disastrous when it's based on the same topic of the movie because you love that movie so much, and there it really is such a huge cult following for Cloverfield. You know, when it originally came out, it didn't make that many waves. I mean, it was okay, a horror movie, found footage, but I wasn't really hearing, oh my gosh, you got like I was hearing the Blair Witch Project. So when I watched it, I was really pleasantly surprised and I enjoyed it. So it could have gone one of 2 ways if they'd actually done a sequel that matched the original, and that could have been severe disappointment. Maybe just it could have gone a really bad way depending on who wrote it. So I think what they did is they decided to completely go away from that and do things differently. And although it angers me that they did it, I also wonder if maybe that was a blessing in disguise. Maybe if they tried to do a sequel that takes place in the same dimension, going around the same situations from the original, it would have not worked. And so they decided to take it this way. I don't know. I gotta say, I give it a 3. I would say if I didn't walk away mad that there really wasn't any connection to Cloverfield, the original, I would have probably given it a 3.5. Based on its own originality of the topic. But because it was Cloverfield, I was angry at the end. I'm like, when you see that monster's face come around the clouds, like I said, I was like, oh yeah, finally. And then it was over. And I was like, what? No, more of that. Give me that too. I want both, If they'd have been able to mix it together and maybe if they were going to create the time on Earth, they should have had the monster in there. That should have been a part of the Earth time, and they didn't do it. So I walked away pissed off. After I had time to digest it, I appreciated what the concept was, and I liked the movie. So it's kind of a struggle to figure out how you rate that,
Okay. Well, that sounds pretty fair. Now, I guess what we could do is we can just use this opportunity for you to kind of segue into a teaser for next week, Christy. What do you got?
Yeah, so there's this big thing going online right now about a movie on Netflix called Veronica, and it is in Spanish. It's subtitled. It's a horror movie, and the second I saw the people talking about it on Twitter, the second I had a moment, I put it on, and in the middle of all this construction and banging. I had my headphones on and watched it on my laptop. And so we're going to review it. Usually I'm trying to get, a couple of different things, going besides movie reviews. But after I watched it, I really want to review it because honestly, I think as far as 2018, for me, it could be one of my favorite horror movies to hit. It's an interesting movie for me. I enjoyed it. And so I'm anxious for you guys to watch it. And Moni, I'm anxious for you to watch it when you're not like dead tired and like walking in it, starting it.
Yeah, full disclosure, my husband actually saw the, he was scrolling through, I think on Twitter, and saw something about like, it's a perfect score, 100% on Rotten Tomatoes, Netflix original. Yes. It's available right now. And, I love anything about demons for starters. Mm-hmm. And I love obviously great horror films, and indie and free and available. So all of these this would hit every note for me. And I was like, cannot wait until these children go to bed. Okay, period. But also cannot wait until these children go to bed so that I can watch this movie. So as soon as the kid went to bed, I'm like watching it. And next thing I know, my husband is snoring. And he never falls asleep during stuff. And to be fair, it was kind of a slow burn. It is interesting, but it is a little bit of a slow buildup. And I did get about halfway through, and I'm just going to say, I know it's a little premature, that I did see one part that was supposed to be scary, and it was not that scary to me. So anyway, I'm looking forward to staying awake and finishing it. And I definitely want to finish it at night because I want to be scared that much. Mm-hmm. And also, sorry, side note regarding Cloverfield Paradox, I did another little video clip of my oldest daughter explaining what the movie is about without having seen the movie. Mm-hmm. So I am going to post that on our Facebook page because awesome. Yeah, she just saw the cover of the film and she actually nails what it's about, which is just kind of funny because, again, she knows nothing. I told her nothing about it. I just said, look at this picture and tell me what this movie is about. Mm-hmm. So those are always fun little video clips awesome. If you guys want to check that out. But yes I am really looking forward to finishing Veronica.
Yes, and I think unfortunately, I think sometimes when you go into a movie and it's got 100% on Rotten Tomatoes, your expectation hat is on. So I don't want to build it up too much with that because I think giving itself what it is. The guy that directed it is he directed Wreck. And so
and the beginning just kind of I feel like harkens back to Wreck a little bit, which was kind of cool, the very opening scene. So
the premises for the movie is it's Madrid, Spain in 1991, which I was a teenager. That I was like almost the same age as this girl. A teen girl finds herself besieged by an evil supernatural force after she played Ouija with two classmates. And what it doesn't say is it's also right in the middle of a full eclipse. So a lot of different things kind of line up, and it was, I thought, a great concept just in that right there. That description is like, oh, that interests me. And
it's based on a real police report too. So
yes. So anybody who wants to join us next week for the review of this, be sure you get on Netflix and watch it and see if your reviews and opinions match ours. Also, I will be bringing a guest on. I'm not going to say who it is yet, but we will have a guest and to help review the film. So I'm excited. Nice. I'm really excited to hear what Yardley thinks about this because I know like your interests lie, and this probably isn't like the type of topic and horror that you usually gravitate towards. So that's why I love having us all on and give us each all individual opinions.
Okay. Well, you know what? I'm excited to check it out. Now, for one of our favorite parts of these podcasts is to let everyone know how they can find us on social media. So to begin with myself, I'm at militant_marker across all platforms. Moni.
Go ahead and just go for the Instagram because I'm the worst on Twitter. It's just Moni Bear, Barre. We'll see you over there.
Okay. I am on Instagram, Creepin' Christy, and on Twitter, we are at Creepin_it, or you can also find us at the Creepin' It Real Show. Same across really all platforms. If you scroll, if you search the Creepin' It Real Show, we're there. So Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, they're all that way.
And absolutely. And as a note to our listeners, we definitely appreciate everyone taking time out of their day to check out our podcast. We're getting more and more downloads every week. And you can also find us on iTunes and Podbean. And we have a couple, we have a Facebook page as well. The Creepin' It Real Show. You can always go over there and join in the conversation. And once more, you can send us an email at creepinitrealshow@gmail.com. If you have any ideas that you might want us to explore for future shows, or you have suggestions on how we can make the show better, we're definitely receptive to people's, critiques and criticisms and whatnot. So just let us know how you feel. Let us know the content that is going to, make you want to download and tune back in every week. So with all of that being said, until next time, everybody.